Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and before we dive into this explosive and controversial development, make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this video so more people can be part of the discussion. Zimbabwe has once again grabbed global headlines, this time not for politics or sanctions, but for something far more serious, the reported purchase of new war weapons from Russia. This revelation has already sparked heated debates within the country, across Africa, and in international corridors of power. The question on everyone's lips is, why now, and what does this mean for Zimbabwe's future? According to reports circulating from both government-linked sources and military insiders, the deal involves a significant procurement of advanced weaponry, ranging from armored vehicles and artillery systems to modernized air defense technology. These are not just symbolic purchases, these are tools that could reshape the country's military posture for decades. For Mnangagwa's administration, this move is being presented as a matter of sovereignty, national defense, and modernization of a military that has long relied on outdated equipment dating back to the liberation struggle era. Yet for critics, it raises alarming concerns about priorities, foreign policy direction, and the possibility of Zimbabwe being drawn deeper into global power games. The timing of this weapons acquisition is no coincidence. The world is currently witnessing one of the most tense geopolitical standoffs in recent history, with Russia locked in conflicts that have isolated it from much of the West. By engaging in an arms deal with Moscow, Zimbabwe is sending a loud message: it is not afraid of aligning with powers that stand outside the Western orbit. This could mean deeper cooperation with Russia, and by extension China, in what some analysts call a recalibration of Africa's loyalties away from Western influence. For the West, particularly the United States and the European Union, this development will not go unnoticed. Already, whispers of possible repercussions are being discussed, from new sanctions to increased diplomatic pressure. On the streets of Harare and in townships across the country, the reaction is mixed. Supporters of the government argue that every sovereign nation has the right to defend itself and that Zimbabwe cannot afford to be caught weak in an era where global conflicts can spill over borders at any moment. They point to instability in the region, from insurgencies in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado to terrorism threats elsewhere in Africa, as justification for strengthening Zimbabwe's defense capabilities. They also frame it as a proud moment, saying Zimbabwe is showing the world that it can make independent decisions without bowing to Western dictates. But critics are furious. They see this as a colossal misallocation of resources at a time when the nation is grappling with crushing poverty, a crumbling health sector, decayed infrastructure, and an economy that leaves millions struggling to survive daily. For them, the image of expensive war machines rolling into Zimbabwe while citizens can't access clean water or electricity is not just insulting, it is dangerous. They warn that this could further militarize the state, embolden security forces in suppressing dissent, and lock Zimbabwe into international alliances that may come with heavy political strings attached. The symbolism of Russia as the supplier adds an even sharper edge. Zimbabwe and Russia have long had warm relations dating back to the Cold War, when the Soviet Union supported liberation movements across Africa. In recent years, Harare has leaned more heavily on Moscow for economic and military cooperation, especially as relations with the West remain frozen over sanctions and disputes about governance and democracy. This new weapons deal seems to be both a continuation of that history and a bold statement that Zimbabwe is ready to fully embrace the Eastern Bloc of power. In the international arena, this move is already raising eyebrows. Neighboring countries are watching closely, especially given the region's fragile peace and history of conflict spilling across borders. South Africa, Zambia, and Mozambique all have their own delicate balances to maintain, and a rearmed Zimbabwe could shift the dynamics of regional security. The African Union and SADC may also be forced to respond, as the continent tries to balance between maintaining peace and avoiding being sucked into global rivalries. For Mnangagwa, the political implications are equally weighty. Domestically, this could strengthen his grip on power, solidifying his image as a leader who prioritizes sovereignty and national strength. The military has always been a powerful player in Zimbabwean politics, and a well-equipped army could reinforce loyalty to his administration. However, it also risks deepening public resentment if citizens feel that once again, guns and tanks are being valued over food and jobs. Opposition leaders are already seizing on this development, blasting the government for caring more about war toys than the suffering of the people. Globally, this may set Zimbabwe on a collision course with Western powers. The US and EU have long maintained sanctions against Zimbabwe's leaders, citing governance and human rights concerns. This new alignment with Russia could provide them with fresh justification to tighten those restrictions. At the same time, it could also draw Zimbabwe closer into Russia's embrace, as Moscow seeks to prove it still has allies around the world despite its own international isolation. For Harare, this is a risky but calculated gamble, betting that the benefits of Russian support outweigh the costs of Western hostility. Yet beneath all the geopolitics, the core issue remains the same: what does this mean for the ordinary Zimbabwean? Will this deal translate into greater security for citizens, or will it simply empower elites and military generals while leaving ordinary people no safer and no richer? Will the purchase of weapons inspire confidence in Zimbabwe's sovereignty, or will it deepen fears that the state is preparing for repression rather than progress? These are the questions now hanging in the air. One thing is clear: Zimbabwe has chosen a path that will not go unnoticed. By purchasing new weapons from Russia, it has signaled to the world that it is ready to assert itself, ready to take sides in a divided global order, and ready to risk the consequences of that decision. Whether this strengthens the nation's hand or leads it into further isolation will depend on what happens next, not just in Harare, but in Moscow, Washington, Brussels, and across the African continent. As the dust settles on this revelation, Zimbabwe stands at a crossroads. The roar of engines from new military hardware may symbolize strength, but the cries of citizens for food, jobs, and dignity will be just as loud. The future now depends on which sound the leadership chooses to hear more clearly.